Max Verstappen of Red Bull won his record-setting 19th race of the season at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. From pole position, the three-time world champion dominated. Charles Leclerc and George Russell joined him on the podium, and Mercedes held off Ferrari to take second place in the Constructors' standings. But there was one controversy at the Abu Dhabi GP, in which Sergio Perez was involved, after he was penalised with 5 seconds after battling Lando Norris. Perez thinks that the blame for his crash with the McLaren driver is 50-50, and he was shocked to get a 5-second penalty. Perez went so far as to say that this season the stewards have been nothing but a bad joke. On Sunday, the Red Bull driver came in second place on the road, but when the time penalty was applied after the race was over, he dropped to 4th. From 9th on the grid, Perez was having a good run as he fought his way up to the podium before he crashed into Norris at the Turn 6 hairpin. The Red Bull driver was given 5 seconds in penalties for starting the crash. Norris used the escape lane to keep going up the track before the Mexican could pass with a cleaner move on the next lap. Norris blamed Perez for what happened and called what he did careless. However, Perez said there was a racing incident between the two and apologized to the race officials for his protests during the race. The driver made a genuine and sincere apology to each of the stewards and explained that he made the comments in the heat of the moment and did not consider the fact that they would be broadcast and the impact of that. He expressed his regret that his comments caused offence to anyone or harm to the sport, which he said he was concerned to avoid. The stewards accept his statements and accept his apology. The stewards also note that the driver is not known for making such comments and has always been extremely respectful in stewards' hearings. He was also reminded that the stewards are always available to explain their decisions when requested by a driver or team representative. The driver, team manager, and the stewards had a constructive discussion about the use and broadcast of team radio messages. The incident itself was also reviewed in detail with the driver, and although he still disagreed with the decision, he stated he could understand the stewards' perspective of the incident. Disagreeing with their decisions was fine, but personal insults were against the standards of the ISC. The stewards did say that they were conflicted in the matter because they were the ones who heard Perez's comments, but since Abu Dhabi was the last race of the season, the usual procedure of telling the stewards about it at the next race could not be used. Perez told all of the stewards that he was sorry for what he said and that he made the comments in the heat of the moment and did not think that they would be broadcast. "Yeah, to be totally honest," Perez said in Abu Dhabi when asked if he disagreed with his penalty. "We ended up contacting, which was unfortunate, but to make contact, you require both parties. I think Lando also had some responsibility in that, because he turned into me as if there was no one there. We ended up making contact tyre to tyre as I was fully alongside him. He cut the corner, he gained time, and I still had the penalty. I honestly don't agree with the decision, but as a driver, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I'm just happy with the performance we put in today. In my opinion, it was a 50-50, but he didn't end up losing anything. If anything, he gained. Yeah, hard to understand why I got the penalty, if I'm totally honest." Horner said that Perez's radio antics were like a football player going crazy when he talked about them with the media. The only difference is that they don't have a microphone on them like a Formula One driver does. "I think he was just voicing his frustration," said Horner. "I think the problem is, if you're a football player, you have a rant. You haven't got a microphone on your shirt. Whereas you can understand his frustration that he's lost a podium. He's driven a great race, so he's had a vent. But unfortunately that vent has been broadcast." Lando Norris, on the other hand, didn't like Sergio Perez's driving and called him careless. When Norris saw that Perez hit him, even though he tried to make the throw easy, he put him in jail. "I mean, I tried to let the guy go, and he crashed into me," Norris said. "I don't know what he was doing, a bit careless to be honest." Another interesting conflict was the one between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, in which the Brit accused the Spaniard of brake testing him in Abu Dhabi. The officials took a quick look at Alonso because he seemed to have slowed down a lot before the braking zone. When this conversation was brought up after the race, Alonso gave a cheeky answer, pointing out that it was a bit of a game to try to get a DRS advantage as the detection line got closer. Lewis obviously is very clever, understands the sport really good and has a lot of experience, but I have more. Hamilton had a frustrating season all around, and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was the last race of it. He will use the off-season though to pick himself back up and chase that record 8th World Championship again next year, saying Mercedes know what they need to do if they are to get him there. We've learned a lot about the car and it's just down to the team now. They know what they need to do. For Leclerc and Ferrari, F1 2023 may not have been a very happy time. Leclerc wanted to end with the usual burnouts on the Abu Dhabi grid. Ferrari turned him down, which made him very unhappy. Not even this for Leclerc vented over the radio. Ferrari and Mercedes were only 4 points apart going into the last race of the season, and second place in the Constructors' standings was still up for grabs. The tides of the race meant that both teams were ahead of that particular battle at different times. In the end, if Perez had finished ahead of Russell after his penalty was applied, Ferrari would have taken second place from Mercedes. The Mercedes driver, on the other hand, stayed close enough to Perez to keep first place, which is worth a huge amount of money for the team. Wolff praised Russell's impeccable driving, but he also took the time to praise how his rival handled the last few laps without using any sneaky moves. I think we came to this weekend a little bit on the back foot when you see Ferrari's performances in the last few races. For whatever reasons, it's so difficult to have the car in a sweet spot. You've seen that with Carlos Sainz, who was never there this weekend, and the same with Lewis Hamilton. Then you have two guys fighting in the front, and I think George's drive today was impeccable also in managing the gaps at the end. The fight with Ferrari is a formidable fight between these two great brands, a team that we respect a lot, and Charles drove like a real sportsman at the end. Perez had sped through the race, but because he had a backup plan, he was more likely to make a late stop and had fresher tyres to work with. The 5-second penalty turned out to be very important, and the head of the Mercedes team praised Russell for how he drove. However, Leclerc and Ferrari were battling hard with Mercedes for first place in the Constructors' standings. Wolff had nice things to say about Leclerc for not purposely holding up Russell and letting Perez get away after letting him pass for second place on the road. Perez for quite some time wasn't really on the radar, Wolff admitted. I mean, we knew that they probably couldn't hang out the one stop when he was ahead, and then he came out 10-11 seconds behind us. At that moment, we only concentrated on ourselves and said, let's extract the quickest race for George, bearing in mind, you need to manage the surfaces, if not, you're falling off a cliff. We knew that we had to be within 5 seconds of Perez, but Leclerc was so far ahead that we didn't believe that he could manage these gaps in order to maybe keep us behind. And at the end, he could have pulled the handbrake on in the last sector and he didn't, and I think that shows a character of a driver. What is your opinion about the last race of the season? Did the teams show that they are ready to end the Red Bull dominance, or are we on the way of another one-team dominance for years to come? Please share your thoughts on the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more F1 news.